Hello, welcome to the Square Base Show, featuring me, your host Rob, and my co-host Val Heffelfinger. In this exciting and thrilling episode, we're going to learn how to build armies in the new old world, and let me tell you, you are not ready for the thrill ride that you're about to go on.
I'm ready, Rob.
I'm glad you're ready. We need to be ready because this might be, and I rang you earlier, this is an emergency podcast, normally Tuesdays. It's now a Monday. We've stepped it up. You could say we've stepped up to the front rank. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, because, in my opinion, the information we're about to go through, which is how you build your armies in the new old world, is the most stunning of all the Almanack information we've had so far, and I love it.
Yes.
But...
Yes.
I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Well, it's actually not just army composition. There's all kinds, as always, you're going to come to us to read between the lines and see the unwritten text of the Warhammer community authors. Often it's just, please God help me, or I can't afford my rent. But this time, there's some other very unique and special things that they have written in there that maybe we'll have to look through to see.
I got to tell you, I got shivers earlier. That's how excited I am about these particular sections. It's quite interesting.
I mean, it could be the COVID, though.
talked about off air. Just looking for a quick lockdown, everyone. Just looking for a quick lockdown. Just a 3-weeker, just so I can get all my affairs in order. I got a lot of jobs to do. Got to clean the venue. Lots is happening. Mainly got to clean the venue. And
why?
This isn't really relevant because I got some Age of Sigmar events. But because in March, not that I don't have like 12 events before then, the Squarebase GT is fully sold out here in Nottingham.
Fully sold out. Wild. Absolutely wild. That's so great. I'm really excited. Are you going to add some more dates? Well, you'll have to find another celebrity guest other than me. But are you going to add some more dates? So what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, so yes, I think most of those other 23 people, you and me talked offline, could I just go to a larger venue? My favorite thing about the TSN Arena is that I cater to 24 people really, really well. And I don't really want to then just go to some school hall and serve everyone Greg's just because I can get more people. Instead, I'd rather put on another date and then have that be, even if it's only half full, still have that date be a thrilling date. So I'm looking at basically the week before or the week after the original date, mainly because 2 of my friends specifically are like, we missed the tickets. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, so I just said I'll just put it on which one of those dates they can do. That's what I said. Anyway.
Well, there you go, Rob. Rob underestimated the raw power of the old world. I don't think he realized just how like just throwing, it was like throwing, chopped up strips of beef into a orca's tank, like they were just all over it. I don't know. Did orcas eat beef? I don't know.
They eat billionaires, and I love that.
They eat billionaires. Also, I do want to do, while we're talking about events, if you don't mind, very quickly.
Yep.
Hashtag Squarebast. The Old World First GT in Umea, Sweden, is also selling tickets. I think they're actually coming out in the beginning of March. Just wanted to plug them. Definitely, Linnaeus is a listener of the show, and he'd love to see some international travelers. Pretty north in old Sweden, I got to say. And I believe so, yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think it's up there.
Yeah. Like people from like Stockholm would much prefer to travel to England than go north to Umea. Like,
I feel like the Miscast Table, which is a great YouTube channel that does 8th edition content for fantasy. I think those guys live up that way, and they travel to Stockholm a couple times a year for a big event. So anyway,
it's like 600 kilometers, I think.
Yeah, Sweden's got Canada vibes for sure. So anyway, if anyone's interested in an Arctic adventure and hop in the old Volvo and head up the whatever into Scandinavia, there's that, and we'll put some information about it in the show notes when this goes up.
Also, a great kind of segue here is Pershaw's asked in the chat, and this lets us talk about the book. Did I miss the launch date for the Old World? How are people organizing events? And thank you to the Duke TCW for subscribing. I feel like that's the Crown Wargaming, the Duke?
The Triple Crown Wargaming, the Duke McHugh.
Oh my god! If you want to go check out Triple Crown Wargaming, I'm actually going to ask them a bunch of questions. I want the details of you later to ask them about hills. Like I was in bed last night being like, remind yourself to ask Val about the hills. And it's like what an
Like as in
go on about
in what sense?
I don't want to get into it now because no one else will care. But how many we need? Are they actually really functional? Do you Do you think the meta is affected drastically by hills? Should I include them in my events? Should I not? Long stuff no one cares about apart from TOs, who also TOs are the most boring people. Let's be clear. Like they're like everything you experience from a TO, it bores you. Packs boring. Other rules boring.
Unless you went to the Squarebase GT, in which case you were all over it. Squarebase GT participants, maybe the most on the ball group of tournament people I have ever done any organization of anything I've ever done, including employment. Those people were on the ball. So maybe the old world crowd is a special type of nerd that likes to read things. If judging by the old rule book, that's a good skill to have.
Okay, yeah. So listen, I want to carry on with my segue. I got distracted by the subscription, so thank you.
No problem.
Persha in the chat asked a good question, not a dumb question. Okay,
yes.
Bring that self-confidence up about how are we organizing events and putting on, how are events in Umea being scheduled? How am I scheduling events? And the answer is really simply because we know the answer, specifically thanks to me, but also there are indicators online. Which we can, if you don't want to take my word for it, then you can, Val, hit us with the goss.
Well, it's a little bit lost a little bit in my memory banks because it was a while ago. But you might recall in a previous episode we talked about the Black Library reveal and how they had referred to the world of legend, and in that world of legend they were going to speak about exciting things that were going to come up. And then the preview happened, and they didn't talk about anything to do with the world of legend. So that means that they either forgot or changed their mind or whatever, because there's a book publisher, I want to say in France, who put up a preview for a book called Lords of the Lance by Graham McNeil, featuring a bunch of Bretonnians and a lady on a Pegasus, a lady peg, if you will. And the thing that is most interesting about this is they not only they put it up with a release date. And if I'm not mistaken, the release date for this totally unrelated, branded Warhammer The Old World book about Bretonnians, Lords of the Lance by Graham McNeil, was January the 20th, Rob. Is there fire worth the smoke? Do we think there's some smoke with this fire?
If you'd like, I could add some kindling to this spicy, hot fire. This is not true. I'm being surreptitious with letting you know this, but I tried to book a table at Warhammer World next year because for some reason I wanted to leave my custom-built wargaming table and go down the road to play at Warhammer World, and I tried to book the 20th. And I was unable to because of a private event.
Private event?
Well, an event. So then I was like, okay, so no problem. I'll go buy a ticket for said event on the website. I go onto the website. There's no event on the website. There's no Age of Sigmar or 40k event on the website. So what indeed is going on the 20th of January? Mr. Val Heffelfinger. And to finish this all off, as to how we think it's coming out very soon, if we look at the end of the Old World Almanack that we're about to go through, you can see that they do say there's going to be an Almanack next Monday, which is Christmas Day. However, if you look quite clearly, it doesn't say what the Almanack will be. We finished
the day after Boxing. It's a Boxing Day.
Sorry,
it's a Boxing Day release.
Boxing Day. Yeah. Or in Sweden, the day after Boxing Day, if you're Swedish. So, because they do Christmas the day before.
Oh, the Christmas Eve is the big day. Got it.
Yeah, it says. So there's no like, oh, we'll next be going on to these rules. And the reason is because that will be the announcement of the launch day. That is, look, we've done so well there. We're like Holmes and Clouseau working together. Only I'm
okay.
Yeah, I want to be Quincy.
So you're calling the 26th. By the way, for our American friends, Boxing Day is a date that no one who celebrates it understands why it exists. I think boxing things up and giving it to the poor, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, so what is the purpose of boxing?
Never do that. Are you mad? What?
Well, what are you boxing then? Or are you just fighting in the streets?
We're boxing the poor into workhouses. That's what's
Got it.
Got
That's
it.
What's happening.
Not square based.
Way more accurate, likely. So we're thinking 26th. All right, that's interesting. So if we
I'm thinking 20th. No, I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is pre-order. No, they're gonna. I think pre-order will be like the 6th or whatever what's like something like that. And then,
all right,
and then it's like 2 weeks, and so it's like the 20th. Is that? Yeah, that's right, 20th. I think release on the 20th.
This is a big deal. Maybe we get the Boxing Day announcement, and then we get a little 3-week pre-order starting on the 30th. Who knows, guys? It may we might be full of poop, but this feels really relevant and real. So it feels like the old world's coming, and also we've thanks to Rob's excellent cafe intel, have believed for a long time that old world was going to be in the fall of 2023. Hashtag whoopsie doodle. And then, but now it's all coming together. I think this is it. We're on the cusp. We're edging on. We're right there, buddy.
The thrill is palpable. Finally, two bits. Number one, we didn't get, obviously, since we were last live, we had the whole Tomb King box leak. We saw the World of Legends. We saw the contents. Do you have do you want to do a quick 5 minutes at the end? Do you want to do a TLDR now?
Let's quick 5 minutes at the end, because that's old news. Let's go to new news.
New old about the old world news.
Exactly.
And a final question, because we do these. If this was a chill Tuesday, this is how we'd be doing it. Have you done any hobby past week? Been any chance, or you've been packed wall to wall?
Hell no. It's the holiday season, and the Heffel House is rammed with festive cheer and get-togethers and stuff. So no, there's been no time for that. But one day, very soon, and I've been looking at some decals. That's a very important thing. I've aspiringly bought a lot of decals, depending on how you like to look at that. For the Bretonians specifically, because I have some Bretonians that I think are really close to being very nice, except whoever painted them, their free-hand was a little bit shaky hand, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
And maybe they had a little left or right eye dominance, because their like crosses are always a little akimbo. So figure just get a nice high opacity paint. Perhaps I'll take a recommendation from the intern and
Rouge Hobbies.
Rouge, and do a little hobby rehab. That's my favorite kind of hobby. Is you take someone else's hard work, swap some bases out, maybe clean up a couple things, and boom, you got an army.
It's good. Well, I'd like to make a small, if you don't mind, announcement.
Go ahead.
I have printed now I'd previously printed some of my Bretonian Lost Kingdom guys before.
Oh, hey guys.
But I wasn't very happy with the print, and so my first Bannerman of my Grail Knight unit fully printed there, just to showcase people. If you listen to the podcast, you can't see. Just imagine a perfect mini. And I'm actually super chuffed with this. It's come out. The shield. I wish you could see the detail on the shield. It's very, very pronounced, which is excellent.
Could you give me a little stress test on that banner? Give me a little. It was off frame. You're out of frame here.
Oh, you can't see it, but it's pretty. I think that's pretty prodigious.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable with that. Yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't be super comfortable with the banner of just like a plastic banner to bend it that much either. So,
yeah.
Those are, just for everyone at home, those are Lost Kingdom minis. Is what that's the set from, which is good. Heart would have broken
on the never-ending.
Yeah.
On the never-ending, it's like the Elon Musk Cybertruck review.
My favorite moment in all of human history, by the way. My favorite
maybe
moment.
One of the best.
Yeah.
What a doofus. What I was going to say was, Lost Kingdoms are fantastic. Now, Rob and I have a little bit of a disagreement over this. I think maybe he should have downscaled them a little bit. We'll see what happens with it on the tabletop. I'm assuming that's one of your beautiful new 30mm by 60mm bases on there, though.
Yes, maybe we should just mention that actually really quick. Yes, we have we've put a bunch of bases up for order if anyone wants to. But we had them designed with a little magnet hole in. So yeah, if I show you on the screen, you can see at the bottom. I'll try and get some light. There's a couple of magnet holes so you can magnetize them on. So that's fun. That is fun, knowing that now I can just speak to our designer and just be like, I need square bases now. I'm sick of this. Which is pretty fun. And we also did a cool little like movement tray thing, which has been super fun because that's also a bit of a headache, movement trays. So we did a fun little movement tray thing where you can they're extendable, basically, and extendable. So they're all up on the Williams shop if you want to go check them out, but you don't have to. That's not really the purpose. It is fun.
Not the purpose.
Because I don't know if you can get 30 by 60 millimeter bases at the minute. So we're doing 30 mil bases and 30 by 60 mil bases because they're not out yet, I think.
Will they ever be in stock? Who knows? Yeah. I was listening to a 40K podcast because I don't know why, but there was a Necron player who was like, yeah, the Necron rules look really good, but half of the stuff has been out of stock for 6 months. It's like, okay, cool, good stuff, great way, GG guys. Release a codex without the models. That's totally not going to happen for Old World though. No.
I mean, I'm not 3D printing because I want to. I'm 3D printing out of necessity. Those models will not be available. I actually want the old Grail Knights. I want Grail Knights in metal that don't stick together and break my clippers. That's what I want. Like, this is just like an unfortunate thing.
It's just an unfortunate thing. And also, I'm going to plug my personal favorite Bretonnians. Actually, I think they're both very good, and you can mix the ranges as well. That was Lost Kingdoms, and my favorite are Titan Forge. Yes. I think Titan Forge is great, and they are available in both 28 millimeter and 32 millimeter scale. Because you will find that I think Rob's Grail Knights there will look really great next to like the AOS Blood Knights, anything that's been on a properly scaled horse. But one of the most like graphic, and we said this on the show so many times, one of the most like glaringly mismatched scales that they do in old heroic scale, the old style that GW would sculpt in, was like vehicles and mounts, horses were all much smaller than even 28 millimeters. So that's a tall horse. It's going to be very imposing.
Well, I did talk about this when I did the release video, the leak video, and I said that it does look like the Tomb King is bigger. Me and the chat spent at least 30 minutes on it. That isn't in the video. We were like, is this bigger? Like, someone was getting we were doing trigonometry. Someone was looking towards the stars to see if it was the right size. Like, there's a whole thing. And I think the Tomb King is 32 mil scale that you can see on the back of the box, but to be discussed in the future.
We'll see.
It's not. However, let's get into the thrilling news, if that's cool.
Let's do it. Let's get to the emergency. We promised an emergency.
Yeah, this is an emergency. Okay, so Old World Almanack mustering the Grand Army of Bretonnia. And this is huge. This is huge. You and me discussed this. We talked about it. We discussed it so you and me discussed, I said it was going to be points ratio. You were talking about you agreed, but you wouldn't mind seeing Force Org. It is going to be points ratio. What's your feelings jumping off the bat there?
Au contraire, my friend. I would have preferred to see a Force Org. Just because from a list building perspective, it just makes things easier. And I think also from a balance perspective, things that we've seen certainly in 40K around Force Org, like detachment-based systems, allows you to, I guess you could still do rule of 3 in this. And we'll see actually, interestingly, how they do control like spamming of certain units and things like that. But yeah, it's I would have liked to see a Force Org, but I can figure out what 25% of 2000 is. It's a number.
Yeah, well, no, I said that you did say you would have preferred a Force Org. I think. Oh, whatever. Yes. Whatever.
Either way, yeah. I would have. I don't hate this. Obviously, this is what I'm used to. This is the way 8th edition worked. This is not how. It's surprising to me too, because this is not how the previous editions for 6th and 7th worked. This is actually a throwback to before that, and I think to other games as well, like Warhammer Ancients Battles. So
I think this is good, especially as we get further down into this almanac or farther in, because it does seem like army list building has been blown wide open from like how it's been blown the hell up. And actually, this might be the most freeform and exciting kind of way to build armies that we've seen yet for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or at least before it was purely an RPG days. Okay, so
yeah.
It's time to muster your forces and select an army. I kind of got a shiver about this. This is exciting because it's like finally, that's what I want to do.
It's big.
It's big. As they have always been in real life, armies in the Warhammer The Old World selected according to a system of points. Interesting. Games that not power, because that was a thing. Games do not have a recommended points value as long as you've got a general and 3 units. You have an army. However, 2,000 points per side will make for a substantial 2 to 3 hour game, perhaps involving 100 or more models each. This really reminds me of when I was a doorman, and I was like, "Hey guys, I'd really like it if. Do you think you guys want to leave now?" And they're like, and I'm like, "It's a suggestion, but it's also a statement."
Is it just Britishness that like you can't make you just can't make a direct statement that it has to be adroit every time? I don't understand. And it's a funny thing with these guys that in a lot of their systems they're very reluctant to name the points level that they think should happen, and I don't understand why that is. But anyway, 2,000 points sounds like what they're shooting for. I think. I don't know about you, Rob, but like a lot of hullabaloo about 8th edition was just, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the big reasons was, there was big model counts, and it was hard to get an army on the table, and painted well, and there were these big units and stuff. But especially from a tournament scene perspective, the standard was, depending on where you were, either 2,400 or 2,500 points. I think that was largely driven by the allocation you were allowed to use for characters, though. So because in those days only 25% could be at the time lords and heroes, and well, let's keep going down the list.
And that boxed a lot of characters out at the time.
Yes, and so I think that in order to get more characters, which are your support units, your buffing units, and to be able to do a lot of cool stuff, I feel like the tournament scene pushed the points level higher. And as the tournament scene does, I think the game store scenes and garage hammer scenes, they'll usually follow whatever the convention is, and I think that pushed a standard game into that 2,400 point range, which is pretty big.
So one of the things I do when I talk about Age of Sigmar, I call it I now follow like the kind of the magic thing, and I call it Age of Sigmar standard. I'm like, everyone's following the preconceived, and I feel like that eventually they will end up with an old world standard, and I think that's good because then you're all having a conversation. I like there's a pug thing I could talk about all day. I won't do that today. So 2,000 points. That's what we're all going to be playing. 2K.
2K, baby.
2K. Right. Understanding army composition lists. An army composition list is broken down into a number of categories: characters that lead your powerful army, core, the heart of your army, special, and rare. Special is skilled and veteran troops capable of anchoring a battle line, and then rare is the most unusual models in your army. In addition, huge. In Age of Sigmar, whenever anyone types in addition is one of my favorite sentences in Warhammer, because then it's
it's a clench your butthole moment.
Yeah. In addition. Many army composition lists will include one or both of the following categories. Mercenaries. Some armies can include specific units drawn from other army lists as mercenaries. This is so good. Because it just means like some designer in Forge World can be like, what if I make hobgoblin mercenaries who are all aristocrats, and it's like just a pack of 10, and that it's effectively just some RPG unit. This is thrilling.
Hot take here. Yeah. Maybe they're baking in the return of Dogs of War.
Oh, they are that. Yeah, no, yes. Clip that, ship it, make that a short. They're baking in. You're right. You couldn't be more right.
And it's set in the Border Princes down by Tilea and Estalia, totally not Italy and Spain. So all of these things line up now. We're getting a little bit of a Venn diagram in the middle of it. The Filthy Dogs of War, which would all be incredible kits if they were to reimagine them / probably just re-release them.
Hopefully reimagine them.
But also just from a perspective, so like if like as we've noted over time, this is a game aimed at existing players or players who have nostalgia for the game, not necessarily like from their perspective. I think it's going to draw in new people, but I think it's clearly the first take is this is for people who miss fantasy, want it to come back. And the thing about them is a lot of them, sure, maybe rebase their armies or sold them or whatever. A lot of them have armies. Like I have a lot of armies that are already ready to go. I don't necessarily need to buy a redone kit. And so once we saw in the spring that old models were coming back, specifically Knights of the Realm, and Robert and I were heartbroken. Anyone who is calling us GW simps due to Rob's hot takes on the Tomb Kings video needs to go back and watch the Only Old Models video on the Honest Wargamer streams, where we are just devastated about this. However, I think strategically,
no one has ever accused me. That cannot be.
No, you don't read. Oh, by the way, 100 the comment guarantee. If we go that many views again, I can't do it. I have carpal tunnel. But anyway, yes, they did. A number of people did. And I shut them down as fast as I could. But anyway, if you're selling the game to people who already have the stuff, then focusing on new kits that are just net new, things that no one owns, is, I think, not a bad strategy. And that's kind of what I guessed at the time. And we've seen that. So like the only new Tomb King model that we've seen so far is one that didn't exist before. It's a zombie dragon. The only new kits that we've seen for Bretonnians are Heroes on a Pegasus. We didn't have a Hero on a Pegasus model for Bretonnians specifically, and as well as Foot Knights, which have never existed. So I wonder if we'll see that as a consistent pattern, that as we go forward, the model kits that are new are completely new.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I don't want to spend ages on this, but I also do. I could do probably 3 to 7 hours on mercenaries I'd like to see, random, you said, Dogs of War. Like, I would love in the comments on YouTube, and if you listen to the podcast, any of those things, like if there's a space for leaving a comment, do that as well. Or go and join like our Patreon and leave the comments in there. I would love to see everyone's, because like there'll be people who've been in this hobby a long time, and I know maybe Val, you could riff off a bunch of them, but there was some like little side bit you read in the 4th edition codex of one of your armies that you were like, oh my god, I would like to see that unit. Something from the Black Library books where there was some mercenary company. Mercenary companies just of themselves. Like if you just went down to the designers, like, okay guys, I just want one mercenary gang warband company from every race, but they're mercenaries and they sell themselves. Go. That's 20 insanely good kits that could be on the horizon.
You might say it's a nice little slice of creative design space that they may have carved out for themselves. So yes, mercenaries being in, pretty cool.
Yeah. Hashtag Honest Wargamer TM design space. Okay, right. And then allies. Most armies can include an ally contingent drawn from another army list, which is also cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So now I'm going to take off my enthusiasm hat and put on my tremendously skeptical hat.
Okay.
Every time GW has brought in unbounded allies rules, whether that's 7th edition 40K that I've experienced personally, or 8th edition 40K, there was a derogatory term known as soup. You could soup your armies.
Oh yeah.
I like to call them multi-faction armies. And basically what will inevitably happen here is, yes, it gives you a lot of like cool scope to create really narratively driven armies with good reasons for things to be there together. If you're looking at it from a tournament format perspective, though, what it will do is it will create metas of armies that don't really hold together and ruin the immersion. And I think because the tournament meta always drives what people play, and I'm going to say that again, the tournament meta drives what people play. Tournament players are the most excited. They're the ones who always share what they're doing. Other people just follow along. You'll start to see people getting gripey about, orcs fighting alongside Tomb Kings or whatever, if that's possible. So I am, and on top of that too, you get interactions like Taudar in 7th edition and 6th edition 40K, where you would just get these armies of the best things from 2 really good armies. And so that would be my one, like throw a little cold water on it. From a tournament perspective, I'm not sure I really do want to see allies in the lists, but we'll have to see how they actually mechanically do it.
I think one of the things we've seen really done really, really well from AOS and 40K is that they've put power behind narrative. Like what I mean by that is like if you have a purely single faction, you get a lot of bonuses, and then if you do ally something in, they get none of those faction bonuses. So they're allied in because they're just good in of themselves. And again, if it's point percentage based, they probably won't be able to make it like a huge portion of that army. But yeah, you're right. It's been a problem in the past. I understand, but we are where we are, which is interesting.
Just I don't want to be a simp, Rob. Also, I hate that word.
Yeah. Also, please keep saying I am. That's great. Type on like official threads, be like, oh,
Do not post in the Facebook Old World group that Rob is a simp for Games Workshop. Okay,
And
do
also-
not post that.
Also, do not post this. Also, everywhere else on the internet. Come on, get to it. Right. Anyway, every faction. There's a little asterisk there. We'll have a grand army upon release, and the little asterisk is
Go to the asterisk.
I am, because it's huge. Yes, including those factions getting a PDF list known as, on this channel and for future in the whole community, Renegade factions. Renegade. So huge.
That is a wonderful thing for them to have committed to in print, and they never go back on what they say. So that's fantastic.
Yes. So including those factions getting a PDF list. So this is incredible. So it sounds like very much what I've heard already is that every faction will have the same level of Grand Army upon release. Okay.
So I think as reported here, created and play tested at the same time potentially.
I think so. I think produced and play tested at the same time. Which is interesting. And then, so this is going to be huge. Everyone has got a grand army upon release, a balanced list of options from which you can pick a wide variety of units chosen from 4 categories shown above. There's usually 1 page of stipulations about the full range of units from each faction is available for selection. Let's take a look at the Grand Army of Bretonia. So your core army list is going to be known as a Grand Army. So that's what it would be. You like my Grand Army list. And here you can see Kingdom of Bretonia Grand Army list composition. So in characters, or probably should we start with core? We'll start with core. Because of core, you need at least 25% of your army's points value need to be spent on, and you must have 1+. You must have 1 unit of Knights of the Realm on foot and or mounted Knights of the Realm. You also must have 1 unit of men-at-arms and or peasant and bowmen. And then you can have 0 to 1 unit of Knights Errant per unit of Knights of the Realm on foot or mounted Knights of the Realm taken. Tell me how you feel.
0 to 1 Knights of the Errant. Sorry, give me that one again. 0 to 1 units of Knights Errant per unit of Knights of the Realm on foot
or mounted taken. So basically, for every 1 unit of Knight of the Realm you take...
They're the cheapest, yes.
Yeah. For every 1 unit of Knight of the Realm you take, you're allowed 1 unit of Knight Errants as well. Now, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to jump out with my 2 thoughts, if you don't mind, straight off the bat. Number one,
please do.
This means that this is going to look like it's going to be different for every army, because it's not just like in the core rules. For Bretonia, it looks like this. And I actually quite like that, because if you're building like more of an elite force, you know, you could be like, I'm going to allow them to have more characters, let's say, or I'm going to require their core to be bigger, or whatever it might be. You know, they might be fairly standard. And then when we get to some of the other elements, like the characters, they're very restrictive. But also, this is a really good kind of like kickoff for helping new people into an army. And what I mean by that is, I remember being confronted with Empire back in the day. And I was like, oh my God, I could get swordsmen, I can get pikemen, I can get spearmen. I'm like, and committing to getting 30 to 40 of any of those was a big deal, right?
The 10 per kit as well, but yes.
Just being like, oh my God, if I make the wrong decision, this is a disaster.
Yes.
But this is like, you've got to have a unit of Knights of the Realm. So go out and buy or print or, build out a matchsticks, whatever you want. You've got to have 1 unit of men-at-arms. And that's, I think, really good for new people. I think it's great. Even good for people who are just busy. You know, they're not like that's great. I like that a lot. Yeah. What do you feel about the core situation?
The core situation. So with Bretonia, I think it's not as bad, and I'll be really interested to see other grand armies in the future, because again, I think one of the things that really drove model count was that you had to take, in this case, 500 points of core, which tends to be your cheapest units. Bretonia is not as big of a deal, because obviously you're going to want to take lots of either Knights of the Realm as sort of your core cavalry thing, and you could minimum troop tax a unit of men-at-arms and fill out your core probably with a reasonably low model count. which is good. Now, some armies won't want to really do that because their best stuff is going to be in the core. But for armies where you are basically purchasing units because you have to, I'd love to see more expensive, powerful choices maybe sneaking in there, which would be great. Also interesting here too is that the Knights Errant are kind of locked in a ratio, whereas before I feel like Knights Errant often were used as, ironically, it completely contradicting what I just said, as the cheapest option to fill out core. And Knights of the Realm, because they're a little bit more expensive and marginally better, were not used as much. So it's interesting. You're driving efficiency by saying what you have to take, so I think it's totally fine. I like that there's more guidance than just, like you said, more guidance than just 25% core, because it also lets them, my concern earlier, push armies to what they narratively want to see, so that the armies look right. It's not just a bunch of Knights Errant and Grail Knights or whatever. You have the core unit. Knights of the Realm have to be represented, and then a bunch of stinking peasants.
Yeah, I think it's great. I really do feel like armies should play as that, like the ludo narrative dissonance that can occur, which is what you were really talking about earlier with the 40k thing. Yes, yeah, like I'm really pro. So I think being told what units you should take for an army is like them sticking to and maintaining a narrative, which should keep the lore nerds happy, which is good. Also, it creates some.
And it's not just lore nerds. It's not just lore nerds. I think it's anyone, because again, like these games are so cinematic, and they fundamentally, like it's a game of aesthetics. You can play this game, like you said, with matchsticks or torn up pieces of paper or printouts or whatever. You can play this game with anything. But we play it with really expensive, exquisitely handcrafted miniatures on purpose. So if those miniatures don't create the world that you're hoping to see, it can be a real big turnoff. And I think that the various editions of all of the games that GW have done that, again, because they're too afraid to put constraints on things and force a economy of choice into narratively driven choices, have resulted in games that are kind of like to look at and don't fire up the imagination for players, and eventually that becomes a turnoff. So I'm glad to see this, because a grand army of Bretonia is going to look like a grand army of Bretonia.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that. I forgot that sometimes I don't like. This is people. Some people may have not been introduced to me. One of the things I always say is tournament gamers are also lore gamers. Say the same thing, same group of people, literally one circle, and people blow like that's not true. And I'm like, you would be amazed. Like why? I'll go to an event and I'll be like, why do you choose that? It's like, well, I read a story, and I'm like, okay. Right.
But there is a constraint on that, and also people tend to gravitate to the most outrageous or the most like, it's funny to call it offensive, but honestly, that's how people react when they see armies that are composed of parts that shouldn't be together. They are offended by it. It doesn't match it's the ludo narrative dissonance. TM apparently.
Well, however, this is great because it's not in this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is, like, this is really good because it structurally makes it so that doesn't necessarily happen, which is great.
Yeah. So moving on from narrative sweet chestnutters and then full hardcore conquerors, let's move on to characters.
Okay.
So characters, up to 50% of your army's points value may be spent on 0 to 1 dukes. So you're not getting more than 1 duke. 0 to 1 baron or prophetess per 1,000 points, and then you can have paladins, damsels, and sergeant at arms to your heart's content. But you can only have 1 baron and 1 duke, or 1 prophetess, and baron and prophetess are actually shown in the same slot. Tell me how you feel about this.
Yeah. So again, this gets right back to what we were describing. Like, I'm sorry to keep using 40k examples, but immediately what pops to my mind are armies that used to take all kinds of Tau commanders. So the Tau commander would be the duke, right? He'd be the equivalent of that, really powerful model, and people would just spam or like take repeated versions of a Tau commander. By making it 0 to 1 dukes, it means that when you look at the army, if there's a duke in it, there's one of them, and that's fantastic. That means that he's the one guy, and I think that's a really great limitation to have, because he's probably also a G. He's probably pretty good at things. Another thing would be on the 0 to 1 baron and prophetess per 1,000 points. That means you can have up to 2 prophetesses per 1,000 points. Prophetess versus Damsel is the higher level wizard that they have available to them, I assume. And I think there was some concern with the magic that it's so blatantly obvious that all you'll ever want to do is take level 4 wizards. You wouldn't want to take level 2 wizard because of how casting and dispel seems to work. So this is cool. This means that the most you can have in a standard army would be 2 of them.
Yeah, in this army, because
in this particular army, yes.
Yeah, like if we saw like a Tzeentch army list, for example, at some point, that might get changed significantly, right? Like, it might be like, which is cool because then that makes you theme it more. Like you're not accidentally building like a magic castle out of a Bretonnian army, which is positive because that's weird and doesn't really make much sense, which is cool. 1 Duke in the army, I love that. But then you can have paladins and damsels, sergeant arms to your heart's content. And
I don't think.
Go on.
Here's a little one. I don't think so. Chat, help me out. Has the sergeant at arms ever existed?
Ooh, great question.
I don't know that it has. And a sergeant at arms sounds like to me, a NCO, a non-commissioned officer, aka a filthy peasant character. And
like I said, on the internet, nowhere near any NCOs.
And so a man of the people, and that says to me that, oh no, you can't do it because you have to have Knights of the Realm. Okay, because I was going to say you could have an all-peasant army potentially, but no, you can't.
Okay, well, that's pretty fun. Okay, so then we go up to special. So special is up to 50% of your army's points value, maybe spent on squires, questing knights, Pegasus knights, and mounted yeomen. And then you can have 0 to 2 units of battle pilgrims per 1,000 points, so that means you can have up to 4 in a 2,000 point list.
Yes,
which is fun.
That's not really a restriction.
no, not really. And then finally, you got rare. So these are only 25%. This is what's interesting. Some armies might be like 25% on rare. Like they might, because this is individual. I have to think that other army lists are going to change up these numbers, right, and ratios. Up to 25% of your army's points value may be spent on Grail Knights or 0 to 1 Field Trebuchet per 1,000 points. So you can have 500 points of Grail Knights all in, and you can have 2 Field Trebuchets basically in the list. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
A lot of the list building in 8th edition was because the difference between rare and special, from even just the types of units they are, is not always really like that obvious why they would fall into one category versus the other.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see if maybe we see things shifted around so that some rare units actually move to special or vice versa, just because sometimes you feel a lot of pressure trying to pick the right 25% to put in your rare, especially when it's a very competitive slot. Like Orcs and Goblins, for example, have a lot of excellent rare choices in 8th edition, just off the top of my head. So some armies, like for example, looks like to me like Bretonnians, you're probably taking your 2 Field Trebuchets. Again, I'm a Grail Knight hater. I don't think they'll be good. But so it doesn't feel like you're going to be struggling to fill up your rare, or you're not going to feel like you're having trouble or constrained by rare points in Bretonnia.
No, Germany's in the chat points out, and I think this is an incredibly good point. I hadn't thought about this. This certainly makes collecting or buying easier. You could just be like, I'm going to go out and get 2 trebuchets. That's the maximum I'll need for when I'm playing. Same with like whatever Grail Knights kind of points are. You don't ever need to take 1,000 points. I do kind of like that freedom in other game systems. Like, I'm going to make my whole army Grail Knights. But narratively, that doesn't make a lot of sense because they're quite rare, right? Like, that's kind of the point. Okay.
Previously too, they haven't mentioned any there's no universal restriction on these choices, because it used to be that in an army list, so a Grand Army used to be 3,000 points. So basically, when you were below that tier, you could only take two duplicates of a rare choice. So you could only have 2 units of Grail Knights in rare before. So there was sort of and like special, the same thing, but I think it was 3. That seems to no longer be the case. Looks like they're being more detailed about which units they want to restrict, which is interesting.
Do you know what? I think Old World is going to be like a complex game to kind of like play. Not that much more complex than some of the other games, because as we know, Warhammer is hard. However,
Yes.
from like I take this page and I could show this to someone, and they'd be like, "Oh, cool! I'm going to buy 2 trebuchets, some Grey Knights. I'm not really bothered about Battle Pilgrims. I'll get a couple of units of Pegasus Knights. I know I've got to get some Knights of the Realm. I know I've got to get some Men at Arms. I'll do that. I've got to get a Duke, like because I need a leader, and I'll probably take a Prophetess. And like you've bought most of an arm. It's guiding you." And the limitations are like, not super like heavy, but it's guiding you quite significantly. Do you worry that you might see armies be too similar, or are you not bothered about
that? Well, I mean, I'm probably not bothered about that. Because I don't know why. I've never found army building to be repetitive, although I am a degenerate who just can always switch to another army. But no, I'm not too worried about that. One thing though I would say is that it's also low key telling you what's good. Yeah. So I can only have one Duke. Oh, he must be good. I don't know what these Battle Pilgrims are, but I should probably have a bunch of those. Like stuff like that. Like Field Trebuchet, I'm only allowed 1 in 1,000 points. Seems good. So
can I just have loads of Pegasus Knights? I'm getting Battle Pilgrims. That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
So it's that all is another way to help. So I think slam dunk so far. I feel like and there's also, as the game progresses, there's the potential for things to get range limited. Maybe they discover that Pegasus Knights are a little overcooked. Maybe they got to be limited to prevent spamming or whatever it is. They can do that, so they can adjust the game to again repair that ludonarrative dissonance if it ever gets out of skew. Because of course, the second this game is in people's hands, no matter how well prepared the game is and how well it's been tested, this thing's going to get put through the paces by every single gamer who's interested in it. So we'll see how things hold up.
Okay, I think that's a really good point. Okay, so allies next. Oh, no, mercenaries. Sorry, mercenaries. Up to 20% of your army's points value may be spent on mercenaries. And we've covered this enough, I think. Could be awesome. Yeah, what I love, I don't want to say this now, is some mercenary company, don't care what they are, let's say an ambushing unit of pistol-wielding ogres.
Ogres, if you will.
Yeah, like I'm doing that, right?
Man-eaters.
Yeah, but like I love the idea that I could play my Bretonians, and then I'm just obsessed with this unit of mercenaries, and then I'm playing my Tomb Kings next time, and then I just have these guys as well. I love that.
They'll show up.
Yeah, right. That's so great, and I can build my own story. They might also be good. There's a whole thing. Yeah. Allies next. Up to 25% of your army points value may be spent on single ally contingent drawn from any Kingdom Bretonian Army of Infamy composition list. We haven't covered that yet. Interesting. Army of Infamy. And then one of the following Grand Army composition lists. Dwarven Mountain Holds, who we have suspicious allegiance with. Empire of Man.
Okay.
High Elf Realms, and then Wood Elf Realms, who we are also suspicious of. We are suspicious. Right? So we are suspicious of those guys. Sus. So let's talk about the fact that there is these, they've named which armies, and then they've also said that you have different kind of, I imagine this is going to be, I don't know how it worked in the past. I think this will be something along the lines of like, you won't be able to use the general's leadership or won't be able to use BSBs and that sort of stuff for suspicious.
Yeah, and they can get downright hostile sometimes. So yeah, I again don't like it. Would be my gut take on it. I think I love the idea because the other thing about ludonarrative dissonance, God, we've got to stop saying that. Is so basically things that don't look right. Immediately, I'm like, why would Wood Elves be fighting alongside Bretonians? Like, come on, man. Like you're gonna have to like do some somersaults to make that work in your brain. Whereas to me, the old world is based on an era of armies in planet Earth place. An era where armies were basically just mercenaries. They were literally hired troops that kings and kingdoms and princedoms would hire up, and they would fight each other, and they were professional soldiers. So they actually it really would make sense to have mercenaries. And on top of that, when you look at a unit of mercenaries, no matter how wacky they are, you can say to yourself, "Oh, they belong there because they're being paid to be there." Whereas a grand army means that a duke has cut a deal with someone, in a dwarf mine somewhere for some cannons, and that doesn't hold together as well for me. Like where like that's like at a different level. Whereas like if it was just like old Gumgrom's Rusty Cannon crew, and it's like that, and
Please
and you
release
can only
that.
have
Release old Gumgrom's Rusty Cannon crew.
and you can only have one of them. And I'd look at your list and be like, all right, that makes sense. They may have hired some dwarves to drag a crappy old cannon out here. So anyway, that's why I'm very hesitant about allies, just because they must be responsibly used, and we'll see how it goes. I suspect most people in their day-to-day collecting won't necessarily make use of them unless they have a reason for it. But in tournaments, again, I think it's not great.
I would also like to shout out, in my personal opinion, where this can get spicy as hell. Because obviously there'll be a lot of narrative, there'll be some BL books, there'll be some other stuff as well. But one of the things I think is really, really exciting is, if I decide I'm going to bring in old Rusty Cannon, Jib Job's Rusty Cannon, Grubs, Rusty Cannon, I could, Bretonian those dwarfs up. I could make them like, sure. Mockeries of heraldry and all sorts of other stuff. And again, the kind of the 3D space, the creator space, or even just kit bashers could have an amazingly fun time with that element of the game, and I think that's quite fun. And
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's maybe like one of the things I'm quite excited about. I think there is so much creativity in this space that people can create armies from. And I think actually being a little bit restricted on that. Other games are very freeform, and I also love them for being freeform as well. I think it's really like, different experiences. You go out for dinner for one experience, you go out for dinner for somewhere else for another experience. This is going to bring its own experience. And I think part of that is being able to build very arguably static armies, like as in construction. I'll build myself a unit of Knights of the Realm and a unit of Men at Arms, and they'll be there forever. So I can actually spend quite a lot of time on those if I want to, because there'll be constant features in my army.
Yep.
And then I can experiment with everything else, which is fun. I think that's important, right? Yeah. Okay. Right. There's a lot to unpack. Firstly, you can't overload your army with powerful wizards. There's, however, flexibility. I think we can skip that. Otherwise, I think we can skip this bit as well.
Although it does say here that at least one paladin for that free battle standard bearer upgrade. That's different. Previously, BSB's battle standard bearers, which we still haven't confirmed what they do in this game.
Okay.
Sorry, if you scroll down, it was in that paragraph you skipped. But you get it for free, at least for Bretonians. So I don't know if that is if that's a common thing or if that's just a different thing.
This is why I'm reading a rule book. I never skip a single line. And I have to. And someone with ADHD, it's horrific. I'm like, no, don't skip. Tough. So tough, right? There is, however, the flexibility to take characters lower ranks, paladins, damsel sergeants, and you certainly want a paladin for a free battle standard bearer upgrade, which is cool.
There you go.
Okay. Otherwise, as long as 25% of your roster for 500 points is spent in a 2,000 point game, which we are not advising you play. Just happens to be 2,000 points. It's spent on units listed as core. You include one unit of Knights of the Realm and other peasant levies. Army selection is very flexible. You expect Grail Knights and Field Trebuchets aren't such a common sight at 38 points per model. So we did get how much Grail Knights cost, 38 points per model, plus 7 per champion musician standard. So you can just cram 2 units of 6 Grail Knights into a 2,000 point army. Perfect for any Duke who prefers to keep every single one of his eggs right in the decorative basket. Talking of Dukes.
I like that. However, what the hell, guys? Like, aren't Foot Knights the new model? Like, shouldn't we talk about that? Yeah. Why are we pushing? Why are we pushing? They didn't even rebase the Grail Knights in the Grail Knights article. They're on 25s, not on 30 by 60s. Jeez Louise, guys, come on. All right.
I'm obsessed with the fact that they won't talk about the new minis they're selling. It's actually a really good point. Unbelievable. Talking of Dukes, we should take a look at, oh my God, we 100% should run a competition to let either the Twitch chat or the Patreon or YouTubers name our Duke for our armies. A 100
Big
Duke. Big Duke. Anyway, Big Duke. So we got Lords of Bretonia here, and then as you can see, it's a bit of a classic thing. So what you've got is Duke at the top, and it gives you all his stats, and then getting cheaper as they go down are Barons and Paladins, and they kind of give you that, and they'll probably I don't think they've put points here. Probably they'll give you what the points of each one of those are as well, but not featured. We get the base size as well, 25 by 20, and what their equipment is.
Yeah.
And this is where, so like a Duke over a Paladin, for instance, has got 2 additional wounds. He's upper strength as well. His weapon skills at 7. He's got 5 attacks. So like there's some significant upgrades from a Paladin to a Duke in melee. But the bit that's, I think, going to be overwhelming for new people, and I think it's worth discussing here, is you have a lot of potential upgrades.
You got some choices here.
You got some choices. But one of the exciting things here is this is hours of your life designing. This is the toilet break of your dreams. This is taking a small holiday, going to the coffee shop and designing the Duke of your choice. Because you've got so many options. You could take a Morning Star, but maybe if you don't want a Morning Star, you can have a great weapon. That's 3 points each. But if you want a Lance, you've got to make sure that Duke is mounted. You could take a Shield. The Shield's going to be awkward because you probably can't take that with a 2-handed weapon. Maybe you want to go Lance and Shield.
Weapon.
Great weapon. Yeah. So then you may be mounted. You can take a Paladin Vow. We don't know what those are yet. Questing Vow or a Grail Vow. Don't know what those are. And you may take Knightly Virtues. Purchase magic items up to 100 points. Magic items up to a Paladin can only take 50 points of magic items, and a Duke over 100 points worth of magic items.
Yep.
And all I hear right now is like tavern music, like boom, 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 as I'm like looking through the wares. I'll take for 65 gold coins, sir, that magical shield. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Anyway, tell me how you feel about this profile and what you're seeing.
I mean, I'm very comfortable in this chaos. And again, it really allows your characters to be customized to whatever job you want them to be doing out there. And, even nestled in what seems to be an overwhelming array of options is more options. So like, may take a single Knightly Virtue. There used to be a bunch of those to figure out which one you want to take. And then, of course, magic items. There used to be massive lists that to scroll through and figure out what you want to do on that front. So again, this is actually where I do struggle because I don't like making bad choices. I think that's why I'm a big net lister. Always have been. I like to have a template because it really helps focus me on, okay, here's what someone else has done that I think has got a good idea. And then I'll tweak it to like my own personal tastes and preferences. And I do recommend anyone who's overwhelmed, like you're going to be seeing lots of people list building and stuff like that. Never be afraid of a net list to get started.
Can we just take a bit of sting out of that for a moment? Because I know some people are going to react negatively to the term net list. Can I just ask that person who is reacting negatively right now to look inside of yourself and just say, do I actually really understand what that means? Why am I so emotionally laden into that? What Val's basically talking about is someone who has got 40 hours of their week to design a Bretonian list versus you who have a Saturday morning to rush. You've done the kids, you've been at work, you've done everything else. You've got to rush to a place. You literally don't have the same gaming experiences, and it's really valuable to appreciate the work that people will put into data mining information, or even net listing, like narratively net listing lists. Actually, like from this particular battle, I designed a list that works exactly like it. It's a really healthy thing that happens in the hobby and is a great resource that people produce for other people. So I'd like to just take the sting out of it for a moment, if that's okay, because it's a good thing that's got a negative attached to the word for some reason. I don't know why.
And well, I'd love to, if we could briefly expound on that a little bit. So in a lot of ways, we're going to lose a lot of the progress that we made in wargaming, in Warhammer, over the last 8 years by going back to the old world. Because a lot of people are going to come to the game with the mentality and approaches that they used to have. When I first started playing Warhammer 40K in the year 2015, it was considered cheating by some to use an airbrush. Okay, like literally it was described as cheating. And there were all kinds of weird bugaboos that the community had, but net listing was certainly one of them, or net decking if you're into collectible card games. And the reason behind that, I think, is that because these armies that you build and paint and create are such expressions of your own personal like effort and taste that some people place, I think, like a very a high tier of snobbish value on doing it yourself. Whereas I think everything what Rob just said is completely true, which is that like not everyone has the boatloads of time to understand every option and have something that when you do finally get out there and put your army on the table and play, then you're not just going to have a bad time because you didn't think of certain combinations or choices that would have been better. And that's beyond like that's just in the customizing phase. That's not even like the actual units you're picking. So for me, who gets overwhelmed, I think, by all of the different choices, why I might take one thing over another, I find that the value and the massive resource of community generated lists, things that people are trying out there, just lets me start at a higher level. And then I spend the 40 hours on the 100 points that I kind of want because I maybe disagree with a take in that list. And that for me is still really satisfying. And I think leads for a better experience for me. I've always said that this is a completely legitimate way to go about playing this game. I think it still is. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Can I just tell you one of the things that I'm so excited about is, and I think we should do this. I'm actually really excited if you fancy doing it. Is you and me should build some like archetypes, like almost like classes, like you would get in D&D, like the Duke, yeah. But like this is the Duke who's like a solo melee Duke, and then the next one is like the Cav bus support Duke, and that's so fun to build up like with magic items or vows or whatever it might be to build up these like awesome little characters and what their suggestion is, or like build a bear, build a Duke. There's some fun stuff there, like. I really like that. I think that's super fun. And yeah, it's really, really cool. And honestly, I do miss this from some of the other games. I do like looking at this, I was like, this is really cool. Like I could choose a Morning Star, I could choose a Great Weapon, I could choose Lance. Hobbying, this is great for hobbyists as well. They've put that on there, which is cool. Okay.
That's actually that's a really great point. This is awesome for both halves of you, right? This is awesome for the hobbyist who wants to make a very specific thing that is like a very specific like item. Maybe it's not super optimized, but it's what they wanted. But it also allows someone who's more of a gamer centric person to look at the requirements of a grand army and say, oh shoot, I don't have anything that can deal with X. And what having a really detailed character build out system like this allows you to do is you can come up with answers that your basic army maybe doesn't have. And so that's another great reason. So it's a really wonderful thing. I love it. It's so much fun. And I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, so much fun. I gotta say that like I'm about to like implode upon myself and like crunch into my own being like a dying star at the start of this next sentence, where the legitimate market leaders of miniature wargaming started an article with grognards may remember multiple.
But it's
ranks.
Not. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Multiple ranks of heroes from previous editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and those delineations are still present and correct. A duke is a mighty warrior indeed, no time for feasting, issuing edicts or spawning decorously across your throne. For these guys, every Bretonnian general is tremendously skilled at arms and strong as a troll. Okay.
And then a sick picture, of Duke killing a troll.
Yeah, absolutely. 11 out of 10 artwork. Okay, options abound. You'll note a choice of weaponry and all those other things. While a shield improves your armor save by +1, which is fun. We'll gloss over the knightly virtues for now, but that sounds like a fun thing. I can't wait to look at. And then we get to see what you could potentially, mount your Duke on. And you obviously can do him on a horse. But we get boring. We get a hippogriff.
Hey.
And we see what that does. It adds +1 to the toughness of the character, gives them +3 wounds, which is nice. And then we are going to get I know we have covered this, but can we just oh no, it doesn't really matter about what happened in the past. This is just good. This is good.
So actually, no, I think this is actually super legit to touch on. In the past, a monstrous mount was separate from the character, which means that it was really wonky. It was terrible, and it also created a lot of feel bad moments where your hippogriff would die out from underneath you, or your lord would die off the top of the hippogriff. So now it just is basically it's a buff to the character, and it becomes one nice big unit, and it is way better. So this is a big kudos.
Yes, this is fantastic. This is actually probably opened up the design space massively. Like, watch out, TM. Then we see it's got movement 7. It's monstrous creature. It's on a 50 by 50 mil base. And then it's got the equipment, may have barding, and then it's got its bunch of USRs: close order, countercharge, fly, large target, stomp attacks, D3, swift stride, and terror. And again, another wicked picture. Yes, your Duke or one of your fancy barons is entitled to ride a hippogriff, capturing as a chick and trained from birth as one of the fiercest mounts of the world. They're fast, strong, and lethal in combat, and they fight independently of their rider, but combine profiles, making a single model that's much tougher. So, real huge positive that we love, in my opinion, which is good. And you did point out to me pre-show that obviously Louis Loncoeur, and if they are to reintroduce Mr. Louis Loncoeur, who is metal.
Well,
he will be a baron on a hippogriff, right?
Yeah, he won't be Louis, but he'll be a fancy dude on a hippogriff. That potentially could be released. Also, like, although a metal model, I gotta say, like, from an era of like metal sculpting, kind of from the early 2000s, basically like the 6th edition window to like 7th edition, some really beautiful things that they sculpted in that era. And I think Louis actually is one of those. He will look comical next to the big griffin that Karl Franz used to ride around on, but he's nonetheless a pretty cool model.
Oh, a quick point, because I think it's been pointed out in the chat, and we didn't cover it as much. This means that we get a 7-wound Duke.
Yeah, like and toughness 5 or 6.
Toughness 5, I think. Toughness 5. He's got 5 attacks himself. Yeah. And then all the attacks from the hippogriff. It's a lot of wounds. That's good. It's very good. Like, you can see why, especially like, monstrous probably lords will be restricted to 1.
Now I have a question here. Now if you could go back to the top, scroll up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we've got the guy got close order, wicked claw, serrated, and Griffonic pelt counts as heavy armor. So that makes me wonder does that stack with the Duke's heavy armor, or is that something else somehow separate? Because again, if it's all combined profiles, the way it usually works is heavy armor would be in the old days 5+, and then a shield would get you to a 4+. And then if you're on a barded warhorse, you'd get to your 3+. And then now you're not mounted, so you get no more bonuses. So I'm wondering how that particular rule stacks, because that might let you get him to a 2+ armor save.
I think it will stack. I think that's what it's going to do. And yeah, because then if he does have a 2+ armor save, this is a 2+ before magic items, a 2+ 7-wound lord. That's pretty good. So we get some ward saves in there, get some regen. Then we got ourselves a legitimate. Yeah, we got ourselves a problem, is what I'm going to call him. Right, the other end,
you got yourselves a stat check. Yes.
At the other end of the martial scale are the men at arms. Yeah, the better end, the lads working, holding up the fiefdom. What they lack in combat prowess, they also lack in workers' rights. No. They lack in bravery, equipment, and chivalric acumen. On the other hand, they're very cheap. Exactly. So wages are suppressed. They don't hold up too bad, the men at arms. I'm going to say it now.
I love the men at arms. Yeah, they're squatty potty, but this is actually one of those units that when I rediscovered Fantasy and started wandering around it, I hadn't ever actually seen these, because they would have come out probably around 2000, and I just was like, so cool. I love their pavés, I think, style shields, the long shields. They got lots of like padded.
Tower
they
shields?
don't have armor.
Tower shields, I think maybe.
Tower shields.
Pavés is also
big shields. And they used to have, I think, pole arms, which were distinct weapons. I don't know if that's still the case. What do they have?
They have pole. They have pole. Oh, well, we'll scroll down and see.
We'll scrolly downy.
They've got hand weapons, pole arms, and light armor and shields. Pole arms.
There you go.
So then we can see the stat line for these guys. They've only got 1 wound each, 1 attack each. There is a yeoman who's the sergeant. He's got 2 attacks, and a grail monk's got 2 attacks as well. These are the profiles. They're only weapon skill 2, which is pretty yikes.
It's not great.
It's not great.
So they're going to hitting most things on 5s. And also, things are going to be hitting them pretty easily, including that Duke on 2s because of the new weapon skill to hit chart.
Yes.
So double +1. So anything weapon skill 5 is going to hit these guys on 2s, which isn't super awesome.
Not good for them. Not good for them. They start as a unit of 10. They're on 25 by 25 millimeter bases. So pumped up. And they got hand weapons, pole arms, light armor, and shields, which is going to give them a 5-up armor save. You can upgrade them to have a yeoman, a grail monk, a standard bearer, a musician, and then the grail monk may be equipped with a blessed triptych of plus 25 points, which we do not know what a blessed triptych is. And then
I think they explain it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's fun. Then they got close order, horde, levies, peasantry, shield wall, and warband. All the special rules. Okay, a Grail Monk functions as a kind of second champion whose blessed triptych will inevitably prove useful. It grants a whole unit stubborn, which is huge. So the first time they're required to take a break test, they don't need to risk a dice roll. Instead, they fall back in good order, combined with shield wall, which allows them to give ground instead of falling back. They're capable of stealing the impetus from even the heaviest cavalry. So they are just a classic anvil, as they say.
Yeah, a pain sponge, if you will. Also, I just want to call out here in the special rules, I don't think we've seen anything before. Have we even seen a regular unit? I don't think we've seen a core unit, really. Horde is listed as a special rule. That's going to be triggering to some. Horde was a rule from 8th edition that they brought in, which in those days allowed you to fight in an extra rank.
Yes.
So I don't know what it does here, but maybe they'll have a lot of low-quality attacks. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe like fight from an extra rank, maybe.
Yeah, that's what it used to be. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if they want to return that. But we'll see. Yeah, Steadfast and Horde. Those are two hot stove things. So we'll see what Horde does now.
Okay. Yes. So then we don't see what it says in the article. Anyway, what do you think of a standard profile? Because for a core unit, I think this is also something worth talking about. For a core unit,
look at that leadership too. Oh boy,
yeah, I know, rough 6. But for a core unit, this has actually got a lot of utility built in with those USRs, which is what we talked about, in last week's show. Close order, horde, levies, peasantry, and shield wall. And they do talk about the fact that stubborn, being given by the Grail Monk, works really well with shield wall. So they have this actually unit of basically schlubs who aren't that good in combat actually still perform a lot of functions thanks to all of those interacting universal special rules. And so while they're not the stellar combat character on a mount, they are doing a lot of stuff for their rules. And that's great. That's what you want out of even the most basic troop, right? They're still doing stuff. That's fun.
And I got to feel like that's a lot more rules than a brick of Men-at-Arms used to have.
Yeah, I haven't done that. Yes, exactly. I haven't done that correlation, but it still feels like they're given a lot of rules, and the rules really create the story, right? And that's really exciting to see. Then, Armies of Infamy, and this seems to be... This is an infamous moment. Another great bit of art. The Grand Army is not the only way to select a force. How dare you? Right. However, each faction will gradually gain access, and this has to be via books, right, to Armies of Infamy, which provide often wildly different ways to muster a force. As a Bretonian lord... Wildly! You might wish to enter exile.
Oh!
I'll be sent there. I wouldn't choose it. Especially as it means you can take the forbidden border princes bombards into battle.
Oh, my.
Oh, my. While those who really just enjoy knights and more knights may prefer the errantry crusade. There's no Old World Almanack. Wow. There's no Old World Almanack next Monday. It's Christmas Day after all. But check on the 26th for something of an off-white Christmas, which I think will be the launch date. This is phenomenally huge stuff. So what we're talking about is I think very much like we're seeing in Armies of Renown in AOS, which is come on, AOS guys, why did you steal this? Come on.
They even used the term Armies of Renown is a Warhammer fantasy term, and they also use it in Warhammer 40K. I always found it really weird that the special special armies were armies of renown. Armies of infamy, though, that is a G title.
Yeah, Armies of Infamy.
JTY really coming up with a nice new way to describe this. I'm into Armies of Infamy.
Yeah, this is when JTY was still like new to the company, and he was in the cafe, and he was talking to the AOS guys. He's like, "Yes, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to call it like Armies of Renown or something." And they were like, "Oh, are you? And then they went and did it, and then he was like, "You motherfuckers, I'm going to make mine way cooler." JTY forever.
Armies of Renown been a long way. I mean, obviously, this is more of a. No, not Armies of Renown. Thesaurus. I want something a little more evil. Infamy.
Infamy.
But no, I love it. I think that's sick. So that's cool. So Border Princes and Errantry Crusade potential army list.
And Border Princes gaining you access to a Bombard, but with the exception of seeing a new Bombard mini, which is one of the potential options, this sounds like the opportunity to kit bash a Bombard, which is insanely good and fun. And then
and there's an ancient Citadel Bombard, I believe, as well, from like way back in the day. So it's a medieval cannon, so it like sits on like a block of wood, and it's just
that's fun.
It's fun, yeah. And there are definitely some awesome third-party Bombards out there in 3D printing world.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of running like, a Border Princes / Armies in Exile Bretonnian army, which is fun as well. And this does mean that the units that you've painted up now have got even more ways to play. And again, that's very exciting. That's what you want. You want the maximum, give with your armies or your units that you've painted.
Or contrary to that, if you already have a Bretonnian army, which is probably painted up much in a way similar to that Grand Army that we've already seen. Now you might be right now before you read this, been like, oh man, I don't give a shit. Like I don't want to build a new Bretonnian army, but I love my Bretonnians. And then boom, now there's two completely different narrative ideas for you to build and paint your army around beyond any differences in rules and all that kind of stuff. So that's really fun and cool. A good way again to generate something out of basically nothing.
Yeah, of course. And then this means if this is what they're going to... And this must be via a book, right? This must be like via the Tomb King book. Like, I'm not really sure, but like, I would feel like that's the way. And if that's the case, then...
It could be campaign books. Like, could be a campaign book. Like,
no, I think the rumors are that there's going to be a rule book for each one. Makes me feel like it has to be each book. And then that means that, like, if you are someone who's like, I can't wait for the old world, Rob, I don't really give a shit about Bretonnia, I'm really excited for when, I don't know, Dwarven Holds come out, we might see like very different dwarf, like, your classic Grand Army dwarfs, and you might see, I don't know, like,
what would they be? Yeah, what would they be? That'd be so sick. It could be troll, it could be a Slayer horde, like, sick.
Drunken dwarfs, like just Bugman at the head, they're just hammered.
Yeah, all Rangers, yep.
Ambushing randomly, like just different bits of them. They don't know where they are.
Or just a band of dwarves that live in the Empire. That's a thing. Like that's a piece of the narrative. Like, yeah, who knows? Like, and then repeat for every faction. That is so cool. And also that is, I think, again, it's fan service, but it's also, I think, a good thing to have taken from previous things, which was, and I don't know them very well, but in 6th and 7th edition, certainly 6th had a lot of unique. They were done through unique Force org charts, often through White Dwarf and things that would let you take different combinations of things that were themed around something. So there was a Slayer army that you could do in those days. So having this means that it seems like maybe every army will get some really cool themed army lists that you can then just have so much fun building. And again, it's going to give a reason for people who have a cabinet of stuff to be like, oh, I don't like my Grand Army anymore. I want to like a renegade badass duke living in some hovel in the Border Princes. That's what I want. So yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, I like that. Or what was the other one? It was the questing army, right? Like an errantry crusade. So yeah, you could
go get some Tomb Kangs.
Yeah, you could go do that and set that up as well. That is sensationally fun. I couldn't agree more. And I think, like, several of those elements have kind of blown this game wide open for me, like even more so than I was. Like, I'm glad we're at the stage where we're finding about army building. I love the army construction. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I like the character building. I think that's great as well.
Yep.
I like how rules dense even the most basic unit is. I think that's
Yep.
actually that's a compliment. And I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, Rob, that might be a lot," and I'm like, "It is a lot. Warhammer is hard. I understand, but for rules nerds like me, I'm like, because it's definitely got a lot of interaction, but it's not necessarily Necromunda level of like,
Yeah.
over the top."
But also like one thing that I was really worried about, and why I've been applauding every single hint we've gotten of a new like unit entry. Every single time we've seen a USR or something was like the danger of, and I think this is the trap that 40K got into when they reboot, is you reboot to really basic army list styles, units with very little flavor, units with very few interactions, and you get a very vanilla build of the game that then cravenly they build on top of with codex releases, new models, all that kind of stuff. What they're doing here is they're releasing a game that they don't have to release a single other thing for. Like the Grand Army lists, I'm just based on what that Bretonnian one. If they're all written with that degree of detail, and if Men at Arms get that many freaking rules, we're getting a game that, again, they don't need to do, in order for us to enjoy it. People who enjoy fantasy already, they don't need to do a damn thing. Like, it's just going to be a game like a full game. Yes, including those factions getting PDF lists, a full game at launch. That's nuts. And that's also something that naysayers have said you can't do when you're rebooting. You couldn't possibly release good rules for everything. That's impossible. And I've always said
one man.
And this is a conventional wisdom, is like, why does GW trickle feed codexes out in 40K across an edition? Why don't they just give us good rules for everybody at the start, and then do fun stuff along the way that makes us interested in different ways? That's exactly what they're doing here. So I'm really hopeful that this works, that they follow through, and they're able to like see this vision continue to grow and continue, because I think this is kind of exactly what I hope for when I see that a new reboot's coming. Like this, for example, will AOS 4.0, I assume it's a full reboot. I don't know.
Oh no, we don't know that. We don't know that yet.
We don't know that. Probably is based on a lot of other things. Like when we're comparing whatever an index battle tome is to a one of the PDF lists that we get for Old World, I'm going to bet that PDF list is just going to be far more like girthy and interesting to play with, even if that's the only list that army has for the next 3 or 4 years.
Well, I think one of the things that I think is most exciting about like all of the armies getting the same level of like care and attention when they've launched, which is really fun, is that like the way that the classic games where they release a codex and then that really far outstrips the PDF. What it looks like those books are going to do, they're just going to give you more ways to play that army versus like necessarily uptick the power level. And of course, maybe one of those armies of infamy is just really, really good, right? Like that just happens to be the case. But maybe also just one of the basic grand armies is also really good as well, and I think that's quite interesting.
They're certainly going to have a lot of rules, and that's usually when things are underperforming. Generally speaking, it's because they just either they're too expensive or they just don't have enough interesting stuff. They don't have things that can do things on the table.
Yeah, doing stuff is really important.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say
you got to do stuff.
Yeah, I would say follow up as well. Like this kind of feels like not the reverse, but like it feels like a countermeasure, because it does feel like, I know that a lot of feedback and a lot of people's responses to seeing all of those very old Tomb King models in that box. Some people were like hype, but some people were like pretty like, "Whoa, my God, like you can't be doing this." But we don't know the resources of this department. We know Games Workshop's resources, they're massive, but Games Workshop are very miserly. We've seen that multiple times across multiple projects. We know how much they underpay their staff. We know all of those things. And so if it's just been a single couple of people, like the resources given to this project was very small, then this might be they're like, okay, we can't make a lot off the minis because we're not given the scope to make a lot of minis. But what we can do is we can really give you an adventure of the mind. We can create the rule set of your dreams.
Yes.
We can give you, like, I've been calling them thought boners. You know, we can give
Yes.
we can give you like a a duke who's now a renegade thought boner, and we can produce those, and so that's our way of like making you more excited or interested in what's happening. You know, and they can lean on like what the Total War franchise has done as well, and how they've expanded the universe as well. So I feel like we're not seeing a lot of the work put into the minis because they weren't allowed to be. And then we're seeing a lot of work put in the rules because that's the one space that they're like, you can sell some books. And they were like, right, we're going to sell the books.
Sell some books.
Yeah, sell some books.
The BBB, the big blue rule book that we saw. I couldn't agree more, Rob. And like, I think it's I've always been a big believer that Games Workshop, when fantasy died, had a thing that models sell models. Basically, they were a model company, and this is probably a perspective that a lot of people coming back into the Games Workshop fold would probably still kind of assume to be the case, and also why I think maybe some of that backlash against like Tomb Kings is something. But to me, the reality has always been plainly obvious that for the most part, rules sell models. So the people who want to and again, it's all about aspiration as well. Like from a business perspective, it's about wanting to play these things. Sometimes people just buy the stuff and it sits on a shelf or whatever. They don't ever get to play the game, but they do get to build lists and aspire to getting the army of their dreams on the battlefield. And they will often buy as if that's going to happen. So the more ways you have to remix what you've already got, again, and the more options that are given to find ways to take, again, like all of these discarded parts. When I switched to fantasy, I said it had a lot to do with my distaste with how 40K was being managed, and I said, screw these guys, I'm going to go play the game that they left in the dumpster. Well, JTY was somewhere nearby and was like, well, yeah, it's a pretty good looking game. Okay, I can probably make some out of that, and he did. And again, respectful voice for JTY. And off he went, and I'm sure obviously there's other people on this team, but maybe not that many. And this really is shaping up. Like, I don't give a shit about Games Workshop. I give a shit about Warhammer, and this really feels like it's gonna be some good Warhammer, and that's great.
I'm excited for people's enjoyment, like the feelings it produces. You're so right. Like I love the Build-A-Bear Duke. I already picture people being like, right, okay, Rob, yeah, like I've read through all the magic items. Obviously, I'm doing like the Duke on a hippogriff with this item and this magic sword, and I'm doing that. But obviously, I'm also doing the other Duke. Come on, I'm not doing two Dukes. Like, what I look like an idiot. Like, the excitement and enthusiasm I think people will have for those different characters, I think will be fun. It's one of the things I've experienced a lot recently is, the passion and love that people do put into these armies. Because I'm mainly an event Warhammer person, I see someone who has built and produced an army, and they normally have a lot of love and enthusiasm for what they've built and done, and they want to share that with you. And the more spaces that are given to us to do those things, going up from going up from a paladin, or is it you go up from a paladin to a, what is the middle rank? It's
Baron.
A Baron. Yeah, there's going to be a moment where at some point in a game, my Paladin is going to destroy your Baron in a fight. Yeah, and I'm going to be like, guess who's the Baron now? Like,
yeah.
And that's quite fun. There's some fun stuff.
There's tons of fun stuff. And by the way, first new rules that Bretonnia have gotten in 23 years. I think 2000 is when their previous army book released, or maybe it's at least 20 years. And I think that relates to when you give people the creative space to build and paint and do all these things. The other thing, and you talk about this a lot, you talk about the production meta. And if I could paraphrase what that is, that's the lag time between like a new rule being released or a new box being released, and the amount of time it literally takes to physically make, build, paint, and get that thing on the table, competitively or otherwise. There's going to be some time there because everyone's going to have different amounts of time to be able to spend to do that. When you look at the way and the pace at which, say, like a game of 40K has moved, and I'm not even talking about codexes, but we're talking about like additions. Additions have moved on this 3-year cycle, so that like someone who might be interested in getting into the game and might say buy, with the reboot, they pick up orcs, because I play orcs. They pick up orcs and they build their army of orcs and they just in time for that army to be on the table with the rules that they have. Well, boom! Now a codex is coming, and a codex is dropping. That's probably going to be in the spring sometime. And now orcs are a different beast. They're going to be totally different, and the pace of change is just breakneck. And I had a great interaction in the Old World Facebook group with someone who basically I'd written a post talking about how my passion came from going to events, playing in tournaments, because you meet people, you make friends. This is how Rob and I are friends, is meeting at an event many years ago. And a lot of my closest friends are people who I've met in that process. And it was just such a wonderful thing to participate in. And there's a lot of this hatred, not just for tournament players and, all kinds of derogative terms for people who play games at tournaments and what they do to the game, but also just this sense that because tournament players are the most influential, and they are without any doubt, that it is very hard to keep up, especially when you have a game with 20 plus factions being drip fed out, and also you're getting different seasons or rule sets that govern the mission set, year to year, or sometimes half year by half year. That it can be incredibly discouraging because your army that you finally got to the table now either is really suboptimal or just straight up doesn't work. So something like this, which feels like if they're coming to the table with really strong grand army lists for everybody, and then are adding on to them rather than superseding them, as maybe that's what they're kind of hinting at. I know that's what you've been saying for a long time now, that might be the nature of campaign books or army books or whatever they might wind up being. Then you're going to have a much more stable meta, or you're going to have a much more stable game that, yes, is going to be changing in the margins, but it's not like something that someone getting into it couldn't possibly keep pace with. And I think that's really important for both getting people into the game and not discouraging people, because I'm feeling that discouragement a lot around things like, especially 40K's 10th edition, which is new for the sake of new in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I think something that really backs up this point and is actually a real compliment to now we're seeing the rules in more detail is if you own a Bretonian army, so as a compliment to players of the past, if you own a Bretonian army, the points for your Grail Knights are the same as the points as they were. So you actually don't need to buy any more Grail Knights. Yes, you might want to rebase them. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do.
Warhammer community definitely wants you to buy more Grail Knights.
yeah, but not the men at arms. Not the guys on foot for some reason, which you do. Right? That's you're right. Why didn't they focus on those? That's such a good point. As soon as you said it, I was like, these guys hate making money. They're so stupid. They hate it. They've done a real service to the people in the past, because you don't have to go out and buy a ton more Grail Knights. You don't have to go buy any more trebuchets. And similarly, you can immediately translate. You don't need to have more or have less. You also haven't made them 3 times more expensive, so that you've now I've got 12 too many Grail Knights. I've got exactly the right amount of Grail Knights 10 years ago as I do now.
And this, I think, is you said you had goosebumps or something when you read the list, when you read this morning, but you just gave me goosebumps, because this is exactly something that really bothered me about 40K. So in 9th edition 40K, I looked at my orcs and I realized that the only things that that were popular in the meta at that particular moment when the book came out were the new models. And it wasn't that they didn't present me with a situation where I wanted to buy the new models. They made it a situation where I had to buy the new models. And that is being a bully. And that's also being fucking lazy. What this does is it says, you've already got these models. Here's some sick rules. Go play this game again. Enjoy yourself. Have a nice time. Also, here's some other really creative rules. And what that's going to do is that's going to make me want to buy new models. That's going to make me, if I have a Bretonian army list over here. We just learned about the Border Princes and Bombards, and I'm immediately thinking oh shit, I want one like that. I have one. Yeah. But I already have one, and it's themed as a grand army, but there's going to be so many people out there who have lost these things. Again, there was a great there's a tremendous loss when this game went away because people were very attached to it because it's awesome. And now it's going to come back. It's a lot of the same, but it's going to provide opportunities to do new things that you want to do, not that you have to do, because that's the way Games Workshop does. Is they make you buy the new book, they make you buy the next thing because you have to. If you want to keep up, you have to. This is going to be a hopefully a nice stretch of releases where something comes up. Oh, that's cool. And if you already have it, great. If you don't, or if it's a different theme or a different vibe and you want to do it, that like mind boner will go off and you'll want to do it. And that's going to actually create customers who don't feel abused all the damn time. Of course, until they get to the cash register because it's still expensive. But, like that to me is like the right way to do this is like this stuff is so cool. You don't have to have predatory sales tactics to sell it. You don't have to just put people in a grind and make them keep buying. You can just very easily make them excited to buy your shit. And I feel like now it's a good time maybe to briefly talk about Tomb Kings. I think that's why you see that, and especially in the comments of your last video, by the way, over 10,000. Rob, it's funny. Cut half the weight out of the show, and suddenly we doubled our views.
Don't be like that. It was just because I literally did an emergency podcast about the leak of the launch box. That's huge.
I know it was awesome, but like just to hop on that, you see this dichotomy in the comments, which is people who were so excited for the idea of new Tomb Kings coming, and because they're not absorbing every between the lines thing that they've seen in every almanac like you and I have. They didn't realize that, in fact, we already saw that old skeletons were coming back in the reveal for the big bone dragon. And so they're now very disappointed because now they feel like they have to buy these old models. Right? They feel like that this...
Can I take a moment to read you I was like, I bet I can showcase this, and I can read you the top 2 newest comments on that video as an example to back you up. Let me read the first. 30 minutes ago, High Volt wrote, "The second I heard these old world minis were going to be metal and resin, I completely lost interest." The comment below that from New Royalty Pie, in all caps, "I just want the box, please."
Right? And like there's lots of people who like wish they could have gotten these armies, they couldn't afford them when they were around or whatever reason. They didn't have the time, lots of things. And they're so excited to get the old models. And the thing is those old models, maybe they don't strike your fancy, but maybe there's a Tomb Kings army of infamy that doesn't rely on derpy skeletons. Maybe the core elements are something else. Or maybe there's a cool remix that happens and like suddenly maybe your mind fires up. Maybe you realize that the only people who make Warhammer are Games Workshop, but there's lots of people who make miniatures. And like you don't have to just buy their stuff. You can find lots of other options that look maybe closer to what you imagine they should look like. So like, and when you have rules that encourage people to find solutions for models that don't exist, then that also to me feels like permission to be like, you don't like these? Fine, fuck, go find yourself something else. And when they release things that are sick, that look awesome and are developed and created in ways that they're really good at, because they are straight up good at making models, then maybe I'll want to buy it. And it's not that I have to buy it. And I think that to me is the right way to make a game and to get people excited to really get diehards. They're like people who are like super committed to it because they are engaging in it freely. They aren't being led along by their noses. So
it's a great tagline, right? Like it's a great potential tagline. Like that, their pitch. Not saying that they did do like an elevator pitch or a single fridge pitch. But they were like, hey, we're relaunching the old world. You don't have to buy any of it, but we'd love it if you joined us. Like that's a kind of nice.
Come along.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like you've said, like it's that they're like, we're gonna just make some cool shit. Get in if you want to. Versus like you have to. It's a great shout. It's an interesting point. Definitely. I think very much like your journey with the Square Base show, ladies and gentlemen out there in the world. You don't have to join us, but you should.
Definitely.
It should be a good ride, and we will be bringing you more videos and content, obviously ramping up to the release and post-release. Me and Val have talked about that a lot. So if there is anything you would like to see from us, leave them in the comments. If you are one of the amazing patrons to support Squarebase, then DM us, leave comments. In the Discord, hit us up with ideas and thoughts about stuff you want to do in the future. We're going to be running events. STL, like we literally talked last week. Val was like, "There's no one could get square bases in the right sizes." I was like, "No problem, we'll solve that." Like,
on it.
Yeah, on it, done, and that's available now. So hopefully we'll try and do a bunch of that stuff as much as we can. Would love to integrate more with like the already existing Squarebase community, so like Triple Rank Crown Wargaming as an example. People
They're
like
coming.
that.
They'll be at the Squarebase GT2, the Resurrection. So they're coming.
But like we'll talk about events you're holding. We've talked about potentially producing like a community calendar so people know when there are events around the world. All those things that we can help. So if there's something we can do in the future to help you, we're going to run a Squarebase event here in this place or whatever. Let us know. We'll try our hardest to get involved in that if that's possible.
Heck yeah.
Good. Any kind of shout outs or anything you want to like sign us off with, bud?
No, I just friggin' over the moon excited for this. It's a lot of fun. And it's amazing that it feels like it's definitely almost here and we're going to be actually playing this game. That's wild to say. And anything you want, you're going to be able to play anything you want. Any army that is, I assume not melted down and ashes in your driveway can be played. So that's going to be sick. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see people playing the game, arguing about what's good because again, no one's going to know. I can't wait to see events start to come out. Can't wait to see just like how many people actually show up because I know just anecdotally so many close friends. People who I've poisoned their minds with with hype, but also just people who have wished they could still play fantasy. Maybe are feeling a little wary of whatever they're into these days, or just straight up excited to be able to do this again. I can't wait to play games with them. It's gonna be fun. I'm also completely overwhelmed by how we once we just have like 1,000 pages of things to talk about rather than one tiny article one almanac that we spend an hour and a half dissecting. This could, it'll be challenging. Maybe if anyone's an editor out there, we could probably use one.
It's going to be fun. It's like this.
Yes.
I did the math. Even a launch, it might be something like it'll be something like 20 armies to review.
I think 18. So 3. 18? 6, 7, and then that was the non-core. That's 3, 5, 9, 16. 16 armies.
I hope.
By the way, non-core. So, by the way, that Pete, I wanted to highlight this before, but non-core. So these armies will have rules as good as the other grand armies: Dark Elves, Skaven, Vampire Counts, Demons of Chaos, Ogre Kingdoms, Lizardmen, Chaos Dwarves. That's what they said were the other factions. So nothing about Dogs of War. But or Kislev or Cathay in the other factions bucket. I'd say we could still hope that we see some from those guys later. But that's everything. It's literally everything, guys. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay, well, it's gonna be really good. So hope you liked it. And then please do tune in, share it with your friends. Don't share it on other places that you're not meant to share it. Thank you from the four corners of the world.
Stay square based.
That's good. We'll workshop it. I think that's a good
We'll work
plan.
it. Yeah.
We'll work